What's up, everybody? It's Ooga Booga. Um, I've been asked a couple times to make kind of a little tips and trick video because I use some weird settings and I play on a controller. Um, I am by no means the hearsay on what to do in this game, but I do have an obscene amount of time playing on a controller. It's all I've ever played on, and doing that, I feel like I've learned just some stuff that might help out if you're new and you're just starting out a controller, or if you've been playing it for a while. But yeah, let's just dive right in to the settings. One of the first things, I don't know if it's superstition or like if it's actually true. I just remember somebody telling me when I first started playing, but they said if you're playing controller, turn the sensitivity up all the way. I don't, it doesn't make sense how, because the sensitivity doesn't affect uh, your movement if you're on controller really. But I always have it all the way up, and it always feels good with it all the way up. I tried playing without it all the way up once, and it did not feel good. So who knows if I'm just making that up. The main thing that I just really wanted to talk about was this calibrate setting. Not many people that I've talked to know about it, and as far as I know, it's a completely underutilized. Now, whether you have like a base knowledge of how joysticks and controllers are calibrated or not, this is a tool that weirdly can be used to affect how your stick moves pretty heavily in this game. And I have spent hours and hours and hours messing around with it, finding what I like, finding stuff that I don't like, finding really funny things. Um, but it really can affect how you play the game, and it's a completely different experience from keyboard and mouse, which is why I think controller is one of the coolest things because you can do that. So let's dive right in. It's located up here in the control section of the menu. You're gonna click on calibrate, okay? First things first, you're gonna get this menu. It's gonna have left stick X, Y, right stick X, Y, left trigger, right trigger. The first thing, and like this is the only thing that I for sure know is true, the left trigger and right trigger. When you're playing on keyboard and mouse, as soon as that spacebar registers that you're hitting it, you're braking, or whatever you have brake bound to. I have it bound to left trigger, right? By default, it's set to this dead zone, this 0, but the sensitivity is at about halfway. Um, it's about there, if I remember correctly. Now, what that does, and this will give you kind of an overview of how this little preview window up here works when showing the calibrations. So if you use brake on one of your triggers, or maybe stick lift, just anything that's time sensitive, really, when the sensitivity is at halfway, real quick, I just want to explain. So um, for this, I am pushing down my left trigger, right? This gray arrow down here, this is the analog like zeros and ones input that it's getting, okay? This white is what the game is telling your Slapshot to do due to your calibration settings, your dead zone 0 and sensitivity. Took me fucking forever to figure that out, but yeah, that's kind of what's going on there. So it's so slight, but you can see with sensitivity at halfway when I'm pressing my trigger. This is about halfway pressing down my trigger. And it's such a minute amount of time, but it's fractions of a second, which can really count when you're braking. It can really just make you miss shots, just mess you up really. And when you have it halfway, it's not registering that you're pressing brake until you're over halfway pressing the trigger. So put sensitivity all the way up. That way, it's hairpin as soon. That's like me barely pressing it and it's ready to go. That as soon as I figured that out, that helped me leagues. I could actually brake on time. I use stick lift, like my like lifting the stick over the puck on my right trigger, so I have sensitivity set to that too. So let's hop into the left and right sticks. Left stick, I keep mostly how it comes. I'm actually gonna explain that after right stick because I do the sensitivity weird. But let's just kind of go over what all of this means. What is a dead zone and 0 sensitivity, just in case you don't know. If you know, you can skip ahead. but I'm going to explain it kind of in terms of Slapshot. And I have my little controller up here so you can see what I'm doing. So the dead zone, how joystick works is it has an X and Y axis, right? -1 to 1 on the X and -1 to 1 on the Y. And then as you're moving the joystick in a circle, it's telling the computer, whatever you're using, based on where it is in that little graph that's inside your joystick, what's going on. So -1x, negative or 1x, 1y, -1y, yada yada yada. A lot of math. It's boring. But the dead zone is kind of how far you are pushing the joystick until it registers. It's kind of a buffer zone so that every time you slightly tap the joystick, you're not flying across the screen. The 0, um, joysticks have something called natural drift. You may have had a few controllers ruined by it, but the just analog mechanisms inside of it that it uses, the calibrations get messed up and stuff gets off center. I mean, you can see, like, if I'm just messing this around, that gray dot's like not exactly on center. And that's because the joystick's not gonna naturally go back to 0, 0 every single time. It's a piece of technology. It's not perfect. So the 0 kind of adjusts for that technologically and gives it a little buffer point so that, like, even if it's not exactly on 0, 0, it'll be like, okay, this is 0, 0. You don't want to touch that. You want to leave that right in the middle. When we get to calibration, that'll take care of it. Now, sensitivity, basically, here's what you need to know, okay? Low sensitivity. When sensitivity is all the way at the lowest, remember the gray dot is my physical input. You can see that it is not going to move, and it will only move a tiny bit once it is out of the dead zone. My dead zone on my x-axis, I'm only moving it like left and right as much as I can. It's set to about halfway, right? And it's not registering until my stick is out halfway to the right or left. Same with the Y. I'll tell you why they're different in a little bit. So what happens when we put the sensitivity all the way up? That game input is, as soon as it crosses that dead zone, it's catching up and exceeding your physical input. So it's basically, sensitivity is like acceleration pretty much. It's kind of hard to put it into words, but more sensitivity, more exaggerated movement is what I would say. It's kind of like in an FPS, you want to have a lower sensitivity so you have more accuracy and you're not flying all over the place once you move your mouse every little bit. This is kind of the same, but you can abuse it, and I'll show you why in a little bit. So the beauty of this is that you have an X and Y axis. Because of that, I got the idea to play around with what could you do with that, because there are lots of different play styles, and I personally, the thing I like about a controller is I can shoot pretty well with it. I can't shoot very accurately, but I can beam that fucker across the court. Why can I do that? Well, you can do it pretty naturally with controller, it's just a shorter movement, but also because I abuse this. And the playstyle that I wanted was I wanted to be able to have full accurate control in the front on the X axis. So moving up here and moving back here, because that's where you're going to be controlling, doing a lot of your fine motor movements, and you don't want that thing flying, right? But out here in no man's land, I wanted that thing to fly so I can whack the puck. And so I messed around with a lot of settings, and here's what I got. Now, I mean, I feel like this definitely helps the shot. I feel like it gets it up to max speed um, as easily as possible with as little effort as possible. It might be a cheat code, call it whatever you want. Keyboard and mouse players probably gonna complain about it. Who cares? Just beat them. It's all good. For the x-axis, right, you'll notice I have sensitivity down. I usually put it around the V. Lower sensitivity, again, means more fine control. I used to set the dead zone real low, but then the problem that I had with that a lot is I would if you ever played skate, it's like doing an ollie is what I do for a shot, and I'm sure everybody else. But if I didn't set the dead zone high enough, okay, I would do a shot. It would kind of drift I would go to take a shot. It would drift the tiniest bit over here, and then it would turn me completely around. And that is because when I take a shot, I'm Yeah, see, it just happened there because I'm fucking around with it. But when I take a shot, I'm not moving it all the way around. I am moving it through the middle, and that's a very important part of this strategy. You'll see it kind of just wop, wop, wop instead of boom. Why is it flicking like that? That is because in calibration, we set the Y dead zone super high. What does that do? Good question. When you're doing a shot, you start at the bottom and you flick up. You go from -1 to 1. You want to get from -1 to 1 as fast as possible. That's how you get the most puck speed. That's how you get those crazy shots. Again, not 100% accurate. I miss a lot of shots, but I send them flying. We set the dead zone all the way up. I have it slightly below all the way up, but you do that because when you pull your joystick down, you see, it doesn't really register a whole lot until you're pretty much at the exact bottom. I used to have sensitivity all the way up for this, but I started wanting a little bit of control in my shots, so I had to lower it a little bit. But basically, it's not registering in that middle nearly as much as the X. Now, when you do that kind of no man's land middle, this little flick right here, I don't know if it's accurately showing it on the joystick, but it's not all the way to the side. It's kind of through the middle. It's not registering here. It is now. It is slightly, but for the most part, it thinks your stick's down here. All of a sudden, whoa, your stick's up here. It needs to catch up. It goes max speed up to there. So because of that dead zone, it kind of allows your stick to teleport, and that's how you get it max speed. Now you have to set again the dead zone on the X. I have it a little bit above halfway, just because you'll see like I'm kind of going through the middle. I don't want it to register really. You don't want to get that kind of spin around effect. You want the X to kind of comfortably register within the left or the right throughout your entire shot, even though you're in the middle. So you'll see, like, even though my stick is pretty close to X0, like, the white is still over on the left. As long as it doesn't cross that line, that's what you want. Because then you'll get the turnaround, which I've missed too many shots with that. Yeah, it's a little embarrassing. But if you ever see me do that, that's why. It's because this is going on. Yeah, so I don't know. I guess let's play around with some stuff because this is what I like. You might like something else. I also, for a while, would just do low dead zone, low sensitivity. Now, this brings me to, I think, an important point, uh, the calibration. I calibrate after every time I change a setting, and whenever my stick starts to feel weird, I calibrate. And it might just be mental again, but it makes me feel better. When you're calibrating, you're going to click calibrate. It's going to come up with this menu. Just press a button, okay? And then you're going to move your joystick, whichever one you're doing, in slow circles all the way around. Do it nice and slow, because if you do too fast, it thinks some weird shit's going on, and it'll usually offline it. But that just gets everything nice and even. It lets your controller know what's going on with it, Treat her nicely. Take her out to dinner. And then I do the same with the Y. It's a little pre-game ritual. And then I'll do that with the left stick too. Now, sometimes it'll say there's a little like miscalculation or drift in your joystick. If it's a lot, I'll usually just recenter it, and you just do that by moving that until that red line disappears, and then it's back at 0. That just basically says, like, ignore what you just did. I don't know. That's just what I do. I don't really know the best thing, but yeah, do whatever you want. So we have the X and the Y set on low dead zone and low sensitivity. Make sure, okay, so make sure you always press done and then save. Otherwise, you won't be able to move once you get out. But let's look at this. So I'm going to basically test these by doing a small spin on the joystick. So like kind of making the smallest circle possible with my joystick, and then a big wide spin to kind of show the difference. So with low sensitivity, low dead zone, doing a small spin, you still have a decent amount of accuracy. Like you can, it skips a little and flicks a little. You can get going pretty fast if you like make it real small, but you still have some accuracy. When you're out on the edges, I mean, you can, it's just like a mouse, you know. Obviously, joystick's smaller, but you'll have a lot more accuracy. Um,
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
you're not going to get that flick. And the flick also, I set it to that because like I set it to that so long ago, like when I was first playing, and like this was hard. Right? Remember those days? Yeah. But I don't know, it just like kind of automated the process for me, and now it's just what I put with. But this is basically, I mean, this whole video is just about showing that you have this customization. Let's go to my favorite, high dead zone, high sensitivity. Calibrate them. And calibrate. Let's look at this now. So we'll do our small circle. Oh boy, not a whole lot. Big circle. I call this the box build because it'll only register that corner, that corner, that corner, and that corner. And you it like are stopped at every. Now, if you kind of want to learn, I did use this to kind of learn like the stick lift dimensions for joystick because you don't have that like room to mess up in between. It kind of automatically goes in between, but just like kind of the timing. I don't know if that would be helpful for anybody else, but it just kind of helped me with that. But yeah, I mean, no accuracy. Hell of a shot though. Yeah, so that's just as stupid. But it, shows you the extremes. So like it's doing that because on the X and the Y, the dead zone's super high. They're both doing that thing that the Y is kind of doing. Like it's only registering when it's on its extreme. And since the sensitivity is super high, um, it's not registering until it's like there. Um, so yeah, play around with these. I recommend it. Now, you can always go back to default if you don't like it, which is nice. But if you find one that you like, try and remember it. There's no metrics on here. I always remember mine by like slightly over middle, and then put sensitivity down to V for X. Dead zone for Y, slightly less than max. Sensitivity, slightly less than mid. That's how I remember it. For my left stick, I put my sensitivity down, basically so that I can have that movement accuracy. I want to be able to move where I want to move. I don't want any of that skipping BS. So that's why I have sensitivity low and the dead zone relatively low. Not all the way, but relatively. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Play around with it. If you have any questions, OOGA Booga on the Discord and on Steam, reach out to me. I'm a pretty friendly person. I'm more than happy to help or show you some things. But yeah, not a lot of people knew about this, I don't think. And now all you beautiful controller players know about it. So go forth and conquer. I made it. Thanks for motivating me. Love y'all. See ya.